Hello, people. We are going to look at the Tommy Robinson case. Hooray! We all love Tommy Robinson, don't we? I was not interested in this in the slightest, but I just thought, you know what? I heard first of all that he was done for breach of the peace, and then I've heard he was found in contempt of court, and I was like, hang on a minute. Is it contempt of court or is it breach of the peace? Because I have no idea which one it was. So I was told eventually that it was contempt of court, and I was like, okay, fair enough. So he's obviously been in contempt of court. So I thought, that's interesting, contempt of court. But wasn't he outside the court building? So I thought, well, let's look into this. I need to know the facts and evidence. Now, thankfully, someone uploaded the stream, and it's an hour and 15 minutes long-ish. And I'm not going to show it because I was unfortunate enough to watch through it once, and after I watched through it once, I was then like, ooh, that's very interesting. Now I've got to watch through it again, and I did that, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to use any of their nonsense that's in the video here, because I'll probably get myself in trouble. So here we are looking at the case facts, if you like, the facts of the claims against Tommy Robinson here, Tommy Robinson, whatever his real name is, and it was really an eye-opener. And I mean, I had to watch an hour and 10 minutes of nonsense, and then eventually in the last 5 minutes of this clip you see the arrest, okay, which is fine. But essentially, points I will say, and I will invite you to watch this if you can be asked, but you know, Tommy turns up at a courthouse. He's basically playing wise guy outside the courthouse. He's like approaching the people as they're going in, which technically it's a public domain. You are allowed to walk up to people in a public domain and say, hello, how are you? Or in Tommy's case, some other nonsense. So I don't think there's anything there that is technically wrong. It's not nice. You know, especially, well, I think, you know, if it's a woman or someone who's a bit more vulnerable going into a courthouse, I think you should use more discretion, just in common courtesy. But obviously Tommy Robinson's beating on his own agenda, and so he's going balls to the wall, if you excuse my phrase, and he's approaching people who are being accused of such and such a crime going into their courthouse, which is fine. But what I will say as a snap review of this hour and 15 minutes, it's not really a journalist. There's no journalist credit. I don't think any journalist would give any credit to what he's done, because what it is, and you can see from this blurred picture in front of you, is it's Tommy Robinson face cam time. Look at me, I'm Tommy Robinson. I'm filming myself outside the courthouse. You know, that's essentially what this is in terms of like the journalistic reviewing of what's going in the court case. He's outside the court. He's not privy to the information that's going on inside the court, and he's just standing outside being a pleb, basically. Now, the thing also is found that as anything, like he says, isn't published, there's no information that I can tell that he's gained, or so there's nothing in this case that he's revealing with this live stream, if you like, of his own face. There's nothing there that he's revealing that hasn't been published by the judiciary already, because the courts have a duty, in my opinion, to publish the information. So you have to ask yourself the question: where did Tommy get this information from? Did he get it from being privy to the public seated gallery in the courtroom, or did he get it from external sources on the internet, the news, the journalist, or something? He said in this video, it's public information that's already out there. So therefore, I mean, he's just giving people's names. He's giving the accusations. I mean, yeah, great. I mean, what's new about that? I haven't seen him say anything that isn't like already in the public domain, which may have been revealed by the judiciary themselves. So the idea of publishing information that's already been published, that's like a republish, but it's already published, so you're just regurgitating common public information. And I went through it, and he's just approaching people and saying, oh, are you happy about that? What do you think about that? Why you're not showing any guilt? You know, it's just like, you know, it's just whatever, great journalism. But there is one thing, and I'm going to show this clip right now, is one guy actually called Tommy Robinson a tosser. So let's look at this, because we're going to look in a minute. We're going to explore the two things that are on the table here. We have breach of the peace, and we have contempt of court. Now, thankfully, breach of the peace, I believe, predates legal memory. So it is a legal wrong, if you like, or crime, whatever, or a legal offence, but it predates legal offence. It's the concept of the Queen peace has always been the Queen's duty to maintain or the King's duty to maintain a peaceful kingdom, you know, to keep everyone in a state of peace, as opposed to war or riot or other things. So that's the Queen's peace. And then the other thing, obviously, is contempt of court. Now, thankfully, court predates legal memory. So it's not, in my opinion, legal advice, because courts have existed since the dawn of time. Yeah, all the way back to whenever there has been a king who needs counsel. Yeah, Queen's Council in England, but in some cases you could just, Roman emperors need counsel. They need an entourage, if you like. They need a group of people they can trust, trusted advisors. No, so let's put it like that. So the idea of these two concepts of breach of the peace and contempt of court is very much people taking the mickey in the presence of the king, particularly because doing that can be that's the old Queen of Hearts things, like off with your head at a whim, as things used to be in the good old days. So let's just look at this guy. So a random guy approaches Tommy Robinson, and you could potentially say, what is a breach of the peace? And maybe we should go through that first, because this is where shit gets real. So put your thinking hats on and put your football cards down. Let's go. So a breach of the peace is relating to a public order. Disturbance of the peace is a crime generally defined as an unsettling of proper order in the public space through one's actions. It can include creating a loud noise by fighting. So fighting itself is a breach of the peace, and obviously if anyone's been touched or harmed, then that might be a separate crime in its own right that people can take against you. Challenging to a fight, disturbance of others by loud or unreasonable noise. Now you've got to be careful with the word unreasonable, because reason is in the eye of the beholder, so therefore it's called subjective. So what's reasonable to one person is not reasonable to another. An extreme case of that would be going to a Pacific island and saying, I don't think you should eat people. And they say, no, it's totally reasonable to eat people. We've been doing it for thousands of years. So reasonable is extreme, even though it's based on the reason of the subject matters and the interpretations of the people who are involved. Loud music and use of profanity. So profanity is a breach of the peace. I'll just hover over that so we get a snap definition. Socially offensive language may also be called swear words, cursing, cuss words, bad language, strong language, offensive language, crude language, coarse language, foul language, bad language, oaths, blasphemous language, vulgar language, and lewd language. So all kinds of naughty words is profanity, which is why you shouldn't really swear in public. I mean, by all means swear in public, but you're not really supposed to swear in public. Keep yourself in honour and an upstanding citizen at all times. Giggle. Right, breach of the peace. So law. This is a dictionary. This is the online dictionary for people. So this is from Collins English Dictionary. So law, an offence against public order, causing an unnecessary disturbance of the peace. Unnecessary. So even though you have caused some sort of breach of the peace, was it necessary? Was one riot to defeat another riot? There's all kinds of nuances that can go into that. Was making one noise or having one fight to break up two other people fighting? There we go, that's a good example. So two people are fighting and some people joins the fight to end the fight. That's a reasonable, that might be necessary. So reasonable and necessary are two very tricky words that you need to always watch out for whenever you're reading anything. Breach of the peace, a violation of the public peace as by a riot. That's a very crucial point. It's really like, think like the riots we had in London where people were smashing, grabbing out windows and stuff, and it's just general unlawful behaviour. That is the police's primary function, is to maintain the peace. Constables are essentially sworn to uphold the peace of the Queen's peace, the King's peace of the land. A disturbance or fighting. So this is basically the Queen's peace as a dictionary. Now, if you go to Magical Legal Dictionary, yeah, there's a lot more words. A comprehensive term encompassing acts or conduct that seriously endangers or disturb public peace and order. Breach of a common law offence. There we go, common law offence. I know from my experience, if we press this common dash law is of relating to base common law or relating to common law marriage. Common law marriage, because it always used to be unwritten. Based on custom rather than documentation. An unwritten law. Yeah, common law with the dash here is how the legal dictionary here is defining the unwritten common law. Is the common dash law. There we go. So, if it's unwritten, it can't be legal. Yeah, so let's leave it at that. So it's saying here it is part of the unwritten law, and therefore not technically legal. Alright, read at your own leisure. I'm not going to go through that, whatever. Boom. Freeze the screen, have a read. So get an idea in your head about breach of the peace. Is there any other breach of the peace? Breach, no, we don't need that. No, don't need that. So hopefully, oh yes, there's one more thing down here. Let's see if it's in the right area. This is a definition taken out of a legal book, so read at your pleasure. See peace, so we'll go to peace. And quickly, let's look at this. This is taken out of another legal book, so read at your pleasure. And a little bit more up here. So security for both life and stuff. Alright, so let's go back to our Tommy Robinson video. Now, I want to bear that in mind. So this is a clever, wise guy who's approached Tommy Robinson first of all. And I quite like this guy. He's a very peaceable guy. He approaches Tommy Robinson. He calls him a tosser. And Tommy Robinson basically says, wait a minute.
You just there's a rape trial going on, yeah. There's a rape trial going on.
Yeah, why is it your business?
There's a rape trial going on.
Why is it your business?
So why am I a tosser for reporting on it?
No, you're a tosser for being you.
Yeah, go on. No, explain it. Explain it. What do you think? What do you think of the 29 young children aged 11 who have been ganged?
It's not my concern.
It's not your concern. It's not my concern. They're young
just
English
a
girls.
wanker.
It's not my concern. This is the problem. You see that?
See, I like that guy. I mean, at first I hated him, but I actually thought, you know what, he went up to Tommy. I mean, he called him a tosser, which is not really pleasant, but he put his arm around him, he listened to Tommy, and he says, why is it your concern? Why is it my concern? You know, we have the judiciary and the police. They are, you know, duty-bound to uphold the laws and get things done. If they're failing in that duty, then you hold them to account. If they're not failing in that duty, then you just carry on as normal. But until you can prove there's any failure of duty, and you can hold the people who act as the officers to account, then you know you can't be like a vigilante, if you like, someone who's kind of interfering with the court system here. Well, the rest of the video, all of this is Tommy. Look, I'll just breeze through it with my cursor. Look, all of it is Tommy Robinson's face. So you know, I was a little bit nauseous by the end of this. But, you know, he's trying to intercept people as they're going into court, and he finds some people who are just going to sit as public viewers, and he finds some people who might be on trial. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what the people look like. But eventually, there's a point in the video where he looks up at the courtroom, and he thinks he can see the judge looking down at him. Right? So he thinks he can see the judge looking out the window, and the judge is obviously caught, oh, Tommy Robinson's out there, what's he doing? And probably someone said, oh, I think he's live streaming, Your Honour, or whatever. And he says, oh, right, that's no good. He's publicising stuff about the court case, Your Honour. Oh, that's very bad. Now, the problem we've got with that is that Tommy Robinson isn't in court. He's outside the court, and there is a difference. And we will explore that difference here. In fact, let's go to Contempt of court on this doodah. Common law offence, contempt of court. So failing to retain a respectful attitude, failing to remain silent, or failing to refrain from showing approval or disapproval of proceedings. So that's smirking, grimacing, laughing, you know, whatever. Refusing to or neglecting to obey a subpoena is. No, if you've been summoned to court, you've got to come. That's the, you know, because otherwise you're in contempt of court and they'll subpoena you, or they won't subpoena you. They'll warrant for your arrest eventually. Yeah. So you know, if you wanna take the piss out of a court, do it at your own, you know, be it on your own head. Willfully disobeying the process or order of the court. That sounds interesting. So maybe there was an order of the court, but now you have to say what was the wording of that order and how did Tommy Robinson actually breach that order. Interfering with the orderly administration of justice, or impairing the authority or dignity of the court. Wow, whatever that means. An officer of the court failing to perform his duties is contempt of court. So bear that in mind when an officer's failing in his duties. A sheriff or bailiff not executing a writ of the court forthwith, or not making a return. So that's more to do with sheriffs, okay? So sheriffs and bailiffs, if they've been ordered to do so, a sheriff has been ordered to collect someone and bring him into court. Do it, sheriff. If you don't do it, you're in contempt of court. So you can understand why sheriffs sometimes act, especially in America, they act with such gusto when they're going in to get people, you know, stomping their guts out and bring them into court. And the same for bailiff. If there's an order being given by the court awarded to a party, it's expected to be executed as it's a lawful order, and therefore the remedy must be done in a timely manner. Yeah, justice must not be delayed or denied. So you know, you got your order, the court's decided in your favour, and therefore boom, bailiffs, get on with it, sort it out. Now let's everyone go on with their lives. So that's another thing. So quite a lot of this is the function of the officers of the court, and a lot of it is the function of the people in court. So the defendant or the prosecutor, the wrongdoer or the claimant, whatever you want to call them, and part of witnesses. This should be. So it's very much people in court. Yeah. So now let's look at the outside of court element. Here we go. All right. Okay. Good. So contempt. Well, I'll let you read this. There's a Latin word there apparently. And one may be imprisoned for a contempt done in court, but not for a contempt out of court, or a private abuse. This is that is absolutely crucial wording, because I think that's what makes the difference between the contempt of court. So, bearing in mind that we've had a judge at the window, or a man acting as judge at the window, peering outside at someone who's in contempt out of court, not a contempt in court. So he's like, what do I do? Now basically the story goes on, and I'll see if I can show it. There's some yellow jacket people. Right, so let's just freeze this.
Emails go on Facebook. He's not allowed to do fuck all. When I was released from prison...
Language, Tommy. So you can see, I don't know if you just saw it then, but there was a police van...
Emails go on Facebook.
There's a police van in the background there, and if I just flick through... Yeah, there we are. There's two more constables out here, or police officers. So there's two police officers at the door of this court. All right, now, police officers know what a breach of the peace is. I'm sure they're trained by their superiors to detect fights, riots, incitement to violence, all this kind of nonsense that causes a breach of the peace. Then they will see that, and they will stamp your guts on you pretty quick if they see you. They'll be more than happy to arrest you for a breach of the peace. That's what they do. That's what their function is. That's their first and primary function. Now, what's interesting in the Tommy Robinson case is that he's outside the courtroom, and towards the end he starts getting a bit suspicious about...
What were you in court for?
This is for a quick 2 minutes with you.
Are you going to arrest me?
So he just said, can I have a quick 2 minutes with you, sir? And Tommy Robinson immediately says, are you going to arrest me?
My colleague's going to explain what's going to happen next, right?
Am I being arrested? I am being arrested.
Now these police officers have arrived to court, and these aren't the same police officers who've been outside of court the whole time. These police officers turned up, asked Tommy to come over, and this is where you have to listen very carefully. I'll see if I can turn up the volume, because it's quite difficult to hear what the police officer says. But let's go back just 5 seconds, and we'll have a little listen.
What's going to happen next, right?
Am I being arrested? I am being...
You are being arrested.
Being arrested.
Wasn't a breach of peace.
Wait.
Explain what's going to happen next, right?
Am I being arrested? I am being arrested.
Wasn't a breach of peace.
For causing a breach of peace.
I've caused a breach of peace. I'm being arrested.
But the content of what
For the content of what you're doing.
Can we just say
streaming.
The content of what...
For streaming, that's not a breach of peace. The content of what you're streaming is not a breach of the peace. What you're trying to say is you're being arrested for contempt of court, but you can't get arrested from contempt of court based on what we just read, because you're outside of court. Prison is not a penalty that is appropriate use. And also, the cop is not arresting him for breach of contempt of court. He's just said, I'm arresting you for breach of peace for streaming. Blah, 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 blah.
I'm streaming. I'm being arrested for breach.
But the content of what you're...
Can we just say...
Let's just go. Listen to that guy on the left there as we see him, right? Just listen to what... Just try and keep your focus on that guy's voice.
I've caused a breach of peace. I'm being arrested.
But the content of what you're...
Can we just say...
The content of what I'm streaming, I'm being arrested.
It's what I'm told. So he has been told. It's not what he's witnessed. I've been told that the content of what you're streaming is a breach of the peace. No. What's happened, in my opinion, is that the man upstairs acting as judge has looked out the window and thought, how can I get Tommy Robinson into my court so I can hold him in contempt? I know, I'll call the cops up to arrest this man. Cops are like, how do I arrest a man for contempt of court when I'm outside? This is kind of like where the blur in the officer's mind has happened, because an officer knows about arresting you for breach of peace, but he says, I'm arresting you for breach of peace based on this streaming blah, 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 blah. And that's what I've been told. So you've been told to arrest me for a breach of the peace that hasn't happened, but now you're gonna using the excuse for the breach of peace as streaming something to the public, all right? Which again isn't a contempt of court. Streaming something to the public isn't a contempt of court, because I believe the term that they actually used in the court was like publishing something. So what's streaming? Streaming is not what the cop just said.
For breach of the peace. I've been arrested for breach of the peace. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. Can you get me a solicitor? Can you
So
get
now he's being read as memorandum rights or whatever the hell that is.
me a solicitor?
Can you just turn off
Yes.
your live feed?
Can you get me a solicitor?
Turn off your live feed.
Now that's the crucial thing. Tommy Robinson cries like a baby and says, "Can you get me a solicitor?" Which is an absolute, joke thing to say. But this is something I've criticised a lot of people about, is this whole running to the legal society for massive amounts of, crowdfunding. Hey, we need to crowdfund £1 billion, guys, to get justice, because justice in our minds costs money. Justice doesn't cost a penny, guys. The reason you would rely on solicitors is so that you could interact with legal society issues in a competent manner, as opposed to fumbling around like an idiot. So the first thing Tommy Robinson's like, I need to call my friends who are the legal solicitors. I need a solicitor. I need to get some help.
Please.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I just said?
No, can you?
Right, okay. That's a good point, and Tommy just answered it right. The cop just said, do you understand what I just said to you? Do you stand under me? That's been well established. Do you understand? Whenever you hear someone say understand, just say fuck you.
Just explain it again.
You're under arrest on suspicion causing a breach of the peace.
What
So you're under arrest for suspicion of breach of the peace. Nothing to do with contempt of court.
does that mean? What does that mean, officer? What does that mean, officer? What does that mean, officer? What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean, officer?
What does that mean? What does that mean?
I've been told that from the feed on Facebook.
I've been told that you've been doing something on Facebook. Okay, how's that breach of the peace?
Yes.
If Tommy Robinson, there is his beautiful little face, well manicured. I mean, he's got every reason to be shining that camera in his own face. Look at it, it's beautiful. But the breach of the peace is not what the copy thinks it is or is defining it. That's not a breach of a peace. Now, let's go to the article, and this is where all is revealed. So, the founder of the English Defence League, blah, 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 Tommy Robinson, whose real name is apparently something else, if you haven't worked that out already, God help you. The judge who locked up the far right for 30 months told him his actions may cause long-running trial, blah, blah, blah. So the judge is trying to sound all, on his high horse, I suppose you might say. Temporary banning any reporting on... and the court would also... A court had also been in place temporary banning any reporting on Tommy Robinson's arrest and sentencing hearing, but the Leeds Live has now revealed the details, so it's been lifted. Eventually, the 35-year-old was arrested out of suspicion of breach of the peace. There is no breach of the peace. I've watched the video. The cop hasn't. The cop is. There's two cops outside the courthouse looking at what Tommy Robinson is doing. Cops turn up in a police van, 4 of them get out and arrest Tommy Robinson for breach of the peace. How can 2 cops be so incompetent that they haven't already arrested Tommy for breach of the peace? And yet 4 people turn up. One of them says, I've been told that you've breached the peace and I'm just following my muggins orders. Right? But mind you, in the meantime, those 2 cops in the door have been completely negligent in their duty. So something has immediately gone wrong there, and it's showing the cards. This is like, hang on, that doesn't make sense. Why are these 4 cops more competent than the 2 cops outside the door that have been watching Tommy for an hour being a knobhead? All right, so that's one thing. And also the cops said, I've been told you've breached the peace, so I'm just going to arrest you. All right, well, who told you? In a rare move, he was arrested, charged and sentenced within 5 hours. Now, breach of the peace. When you've been arrested, where did they take you? Every single time, they take you to something called the magistrate's court. All right, that's procedurally what they do. So procedurally, whenever you've been arrested, you're taken to a police station, you're booked in, stuck in a cell. Then when the court is available for you, you go to the magistrate's court, you appeal before court, they arraign you, and get on with the process of trying you. Okay. Now in this case, they did not take him to the magistrate's court. What happened? That Judge Jeffrey Marsden QC, standing at the window, is thinking, how can I get this guy in my court? Because once he's in my court, I can deal with him with the full weight of contempt of court. So, now we kind of see what's going on here. Someone's made a little call to the police have arrested Tommy Robinson for a breach of the peace, and lo and behold, he's dragged up into the court where he can now be found in contempt of the court as an arrestable offence, as opposed to a fine for being a knobhead outside the court. So this is where the judge has used I would say, broken character in a little way. Judge Jeffrey has now just become Jeffrey, and Jeffrey's decided, hey, I know what, I'll get the cops to arrest him, they'll bring him into my court, and now I can jump back into Judge Jeffrey mode, and now I can contempt of court him. Okay, I think that's what's happened. Robinson's, whose criminal record, blah, 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 dates back... Yeah, so it's all happened within 5 hours. So even after being arrested, he wasn't brought before a justice of the peace. He wasn't taken to magistrate's court. He was dragged straight into Crown Court, and I have phoned Crown Court asking, can I speak to a justice of the peace? And Crown Court have no justices of the peace seated. They have trial judges. Yeah, because the judges are there to make sure that the jury in a Crown Court, who's witnessing the acts of the criminals that are being accused of such a crime, they make sure that the jury is not. That's their primary role, is to ensure that the jury have no interference, if you like, from the outside world, or from people inside the court, or from the prosecutor asking a crappy question, or the defence saying something that might prejudice the jury. So he's making sure that things that go on the record or are heard for by the jury are specifically reliable information that they can use to make up their own minds. Yeah, things like hearsay evidence and nonsense and all kinds of tosh. The judge is there to say, no, go away. You're not listening to that. Stay that. Redact that. Or sometimes he'll even ask the jury to leave the room so that he can discuss things that aren't, relevant to the jury, but they may impact their decision-making ability. So there's all kinds of things that can be done at that judge, and that's his primary function. That's right. With Tommy Robinson, is like he's asked for a solicitor straight away. They managed to get him into court, and he's talking about his criminal records. So here's the convictions. He pleaded guilty. So it's all for nothing. It's all for nothing. So he's pleaded guilty. So he's been brought in front of the judge. He hasn't said, why am I in the Crown? Why have you dragged me into the court where you're going to find me in contempt of? Why am I not in front of a magistrate's court? He hasn't asked that question. No, he's just been dragged by the cops straight into a court. Now, there's a word I think you might want to. I think it. What's it called? N something. It begins N. He's there to witness it. So now the thing is, and how have I ended up in this room with a court where I can be held in contempt of court without a trial? Yeah. So he's been dragged in. He should have gone to a magistrate's court to be booked. This guy's a knobhead. Here are justices of the peace. Look, we arrested this guy. And then the justices of the peace would have said, so what did he do? He was streaming on a camera. No, but did he punch anyone? No. Did he smash a shop window in? Was he being riotous? No. Did he swear at people, use massive amounts of profanity? No. Well, and Tommy Robinson said there was 2 cops outside the front of the courthouse the whole time. They didn't arrest me. These guys turned up out of nowhere and dragged me and pulled me off. That is the thing I have an issue with. Massive issue. And it's self-serving that these guys who arrested, the 4 cops that arrested him, how did Tommy end up in that courtroom? That is not procedurally correct. It's because there's something going on here. Matthew Harding, mitigating, said to his client, so already he's now being represented in the legal world. No wonder they can get this done within 5 hours. They watched a video, that might have taken an hour, and Tommy Robinson's already pleaded guilty, so he has no rights to any jury or defence. He's pleaded. He says, "Yeah, I did it. I breached the peace, and C, I contempted a court." He's a complete pleb. So obviously someone's had some sort of ear in some sort of like, oh, look, mate, you're in big trouble if you don't plead guilty. And he's had Matthew Harding. He has had to have someone to stand in for him just to say I'm guilty. I mean, how hard is it to go, I'm guilty, I did it, but oh no, I need someone else to come in and say I'm guilty for me. I mean, how stupid is that? I mean, how hard is it to say I'm guilty? No, but Matthew, please just go in and say I'm guilty for me. So he pleaded guilty. Yeah, I did it. Judge, I'm doing it. Throw the book at me. So why would people ever get upset? So based on all the stuff that I've told you, how suspicious this arrest is, it doesn't matter because he's pleaded guilty. My brain is exploding with the stupidity of Tommy Robinson. So whoever, don't look for Tommy Robinson for any kind of advice in relation to matters of the law. All right, please just don't. After realising the potential consequences of his action, he said Tommy Robinson was aware of reporting restrictions in place. Was he reporting? Was he streaming to his fan base that he's outside of a courthouse? I mean, there's no information that I saw that I got from him that I couldn't have found out by going to the judiciary websites about who, what, and where. Barrister, and he's also got a barrister. Why has he got a barrister? Because where did the barristers hang out? Crown Court. He was mindful, having spoken to others and taken advice. Not that saying things he thought would actually prejudice the case. He did not try to cause difficulties to the court process. Yes, there's no intent, but why am I arrested for breach of the peace, and how did I end up in your courthouse this courtroom answering your questions? This is I can't work that out. I'd love someone to explain it to me. Mr. Harding said, victim of assault and had a price on his head. Yeah. No one could possibly conclude that it was anything that would be anything other than a highly prejudicial to no one. So now the judge is talking on my behalf. So he's saying no one. Well, I don't know. I didn't see anything. I'm one. The judiciary, this judge is speaking on my behalf, he's speaking on your behalf, he's speaking on everyone. He says no one, I'm a one, could possibly conclude that it would be anything other than highly prejudicial to the defendants in the trial. I respect everyone's right to free speech. Again, he's talking about free speech. It's one of the most important rights we have. One of the most, yeah. Right to a fair trial would be another one. Right to be let alone in peace. Right not to be wrongfully arrested would be another one. With those rights comes responsibilities. Yes, the responsibilities also are from judiciary members, not ordering out the cops to come. Well, I mean, I'm speculating here, but it's very suspicious that he's been arrested and not taken to a magistrate's court. He's been taken straight into the courtroom where he can be held in contempt of court. Oh, it's just such an interesting kind of joining of the motivations there. You know, oh, look, a guy out there, I need him in my room. What can I do? Oh, I'll call the police. They'll listen to me. They'll follow orders. I'm not sure you appreciate the potential consequences you have done. The potential. So he's not even saying it had happened. No, Tommy, I'm not saying it's wrong. But it doesn't matter because Tommy Robinson's pleaded guilty. What a knobhead. The judge added, you have to understand we are not preventing publication. We are postponing publication to ensure that the trial is fair. Yeah, fair enough. But like I said, what did he publish? He was just basically like, look at my beautiful face. I'm Tommy Robinson streaming my face outside a courtroom. A courthouse, not even a room. He's outside, he's on a public street. When people are convicted and given long sentences, it is proper basis and not a conviction that can be overturned. Exactly. Once a jury has rendered a verdict, it is done. It is a serious feature that you are encouraging others to share what you were streaming live on social media. But just because... So that's like, is everyone in the country who was streaming something on social media? I mean, the content, what was actually being said to the people that could have changed their outlook on the trial. That's the nuance here to be in contempt. I mean, there has to be some sort of prejudice. And go through the footage. Is there any prejudice? I've looked for it, and it's just a load of stuff that he's reading out, which has already been. I mean, where does Tommy Robinson get it from? Is Tommy Robinson in the privileged position that he has more information that you and I could have just got off the internet, or is Tommy Robinson a pleb like me and you, and he's just looked on the information on the internet and just dragged it off from what's already out there? Or is it the fact that he's just repeating what's already out there in a period of time that shouldn't have been repeated? I don't know, but it's an interesting nuance of this order, this court order, in order to be in contempt of court or not in contempt of court. But also you have to bear in mind he's not in court, he's outside of court. And the only way he could have been made in contempt of court and gone to prison, that I showed you earlier, is you have to actually be in court, not out of court, acting in the private capacity, not as a participant of the court itself. But there we are, that's my 2 cents. So, what can we do? Well, who cares? You know, what you can do, you can stop watching football and start learning the law. That's the first thing. What else can you do? Well, you know, it does involve writing letters, but I've got more important things to do at the moment than save a guy who pleads guilty to nonsense charges against him.